Very much. I want to thank you, Senator Blumenthal, and you, Senator Booker, for your work, and I'm looking forward to working with you on both my positions on Judiciary and Commerce to get this done. I will try to show the same restraint as you did, Senator Booker. It's not as good, but it's pretty good. In asking my first question to Governor Baker and noting that, given that he's from Massachusetts, where they play a lot of hockey, that the University of Minnesota, Duluth, and U of M women's hockey teams have collectively won 11 NCAA championships since 2001. I'm not sure you can have that record in Massachusetts.
I got nothing there. I got nothing.
All right.
Harvard has won several women's NCAA championships, but those numbers in Minnesota are very special.
Excellent answer. Okay, next. Can you elaborate on how the NCAA's new policies will help student athletes, the ones that you note in your written testimony about improving financial outcomes, including in areas of financial literacy, standard contract terms, agent registration?
Sure. The policies that the D1 Council is working their way through should be voted on before the end of the year, but they're basically designed to create what I would describe as some transparency and accountability. The financial literacy piece is something some schools already do. We would like to see everybody required to do that. The Uniform Standard Contract is basically about doing exactly the same thing we do in almost every financial transaction industry in America, which is to have a contract that represents basic terms, and if an agent wants to move off of that, they need to explain to the student athlete and the family why they want to move off it. The third part is to create what I would describe as a system where student athletes would make available to their schools what their deal looks like, and then all that data would get de-identified and incorporated into kind of a public distribution, so that if you were a gymnast, if you were a football player, if you were a basketball player, you would have some idea of what traditionally NIL looks like for you or for somebody like you, so that you have some idea about what it is you should get. And then the final piece is to make sure that we have an agents registry where agents have to, among other things, say they work for their customer, their client, because there's way too many examples at this point of agents taking advantage of student athletes.
I remember we talked about that when we met. Thank you. Mr. Petiti, how do the lack of uniform rules, I think we have 31 state laws now that have emerged, how do that lack of rules put schools and states without NIL laws like Minnesota at a disadvantage because they cannot take advantage of state laws that preempt NCAA rules and are more permissive?
It's creating a recruiting and a transfer advantage in those states where money can flow to student athletes that is encouraging attendance, it's encouraging transfer. States that have not acted so far are in different positions. What we have, it's been mentioned earlier, is a situation where we compete in one conference across many states. We want that to be somewhat balanced. There's already enough. We have different size stadiums. There's a lot of things that impact competitiveness. But in this case, we're seeing states increasingly keep ratcheting up what they're doing to try to improve competitive. So it starts at one place, and the next state keeps going in one direction.
And Ms. Thomas, does that lack of a single nationwide standard make things more difficult for student athletes?
Yes, it makes things much more difficult and very confusing a lot of times. Okay.
Another issue that's related, Ms. Bodensteiner, after 50 years of Title IX, our athletes shouldn't have to fight to get adequate pay. As you know, Senator Cantwell and the Commerce Committee, we've worked to pass legislation, the Equal Pay for Team USA Act, which now requires equal pay and resources. How can we ensure that gender pay disparities don't persist under an NIL system?
I think it's a combination of what Governor Baker and Mr. Swarbrick have already mentioned. One is transparency, and two is getting back to legitimate NIL deals where the actual capitalist market is paying, in which case women will succeed at a greater level, I believe, than male athletes. But I think it all comes down to getting rid of this, should be impermissible market of paying athletes to attend institutions.
Okay, Mr. Petiti, back to you. When we had a hearing, we all saw firsthand Simone Biles, Allie Raisman, Michaela Maroney, and Minnesotan Maggie Nicholas testify. before the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2021. By coming forward, we know they made a difference. What measures are the Big Ten and its member institutions implementing to ensure these types of abuse don't occur? We're very proud to have the final Olympic gymnastics trials destined for Minnesota in June of 2024, and I think there'll be a lot of discussion about that. So if you could just answer it from the Big Ten's perspective.
Yes, thank you, Senator. First, we want to make sure we ensure the safest environment for student athletes, for coaches, and for the students that work in athletic departments. That's number one. Since then, we were the first to install a chief medical officer. The amount of attention and resources from the conference office, what we're trying to do is make sure that our members have, the best resources to make sure that we're guaranteeing a safe environment for everybody involved.
Thank you. And I'll ask on the record, Mr. Huma, questions I had about the announcement on the long-term health and disability benefits, which I'd like to, I'll do it later and defer to my colleagues. Thank you.